Hello and welcome back to Body Joy. This is week number 7, and this week we are talking all about meditation. I had so much fun prepping this class for you. It's just, even just thinking about meditation put me in such a peaceful and centered place. And I just loved looking up all the quotes and all the things that the rishis have said about meditation. And it just immediately put me into the state of peace. So this week, we are all talking about the ins and outs of meditation and everything that's connected to it. I like to think about meditation not in terms of meditation, but simply sitting in silence, because meditation often has this charge to it. Sitting in silence seems rather ordinary. It's more attainable in a way, and there's less expectations around it. So it seems like just calling it, I'm going to sit, is a lot easier than, I'm going to sit on my cushion and meditate. But before we dive deep into our discussion around meditation, I want to quickly recap where we've been so far. Repetition is practice, right? And through practice and repetition, we really gain excellence and perfection. Dovetailing practices. I hope you're starting to see that these practices and these habits that we are talking about are really an intelligent sequence that build upon one another. You're doing the one thing and the other thing happens naturally. So we talked about earlier, lighter dinners that then helps us to go to bed earlier, which then helps us to have a deeper night's sleep and more rest during the night. Then when we get up in the morning, we are more recharged and we actually can start our day right and do our breath body practices and get moving, get our prana flowing. And that actually then sets us up for a much better day. So you're probably saying now like, yeah, Alexandra, I got that. And it's a lot. And you're completely right. It's quite a bit to absorb. And the good news is that you have the rest of your life to perfect these habits. And there's no rush. We really can relax into that and just focus on what can I do today? What's the little step that I can take today that's going to get me towards my vision of a more happier and healthier self? So what I want to say is that you don't have to have it perfectly right now. But you can take simple action steps like we talked about. And in case you're wondering if all the support is going to fall away after these 10 weeks, it's not. There is an opportunity to continue with the group. There's an opportunity to continue with the momentum that you have built thus far. So this is a ship, and this ship is headed for Germany. That's where I want to go. So we're headed for Europe. And there's this funny thing where when you change the degree at which this boat is going on the ocean by simply 1 degree, this ship is going to end up in Africa. So by simply shifting the degree at which this ship is going, we end up on a completely different continent. And I think this is pretty cool, and it relates to our habits in a way that if we just do these little shifts day by day and we stick with them and we keep doing this 1 degree shift, we are actually going to end up in a completely different place. What you're looking for, or in essence what I'm looking for, is that next year I'm going to feel better than I did this year. So often in our society it's that notion that, I'm getting older, of course I'm not going to feel as good as before, as last year or the year before that. But really, when I look back to my 20s, I can honestly say that my body, my mind, and my spirit, they feel more full, more healthy, more connected than I have ever felt in my life. So everything that I have been adopting and that I'm teaching you here is really profound in the way it makes you more full. It makes you more deeply connected to yourself. And my plan for myself is continue going in that direction. And I wish that for you too. Ultimately, as humans, we are all looking for the same thing. It's the one thing that we all look for is happiness. No matter whether you are a good person or a bad person, whether you're thin or fat, or whether you're a saint or a criminal, whether you're smart or you're stupid, we actually, as humans, we're all looking for the same thing, and that is happiness. So how are our habits connected to our happiness and joy? So let's say we had an unhappy sort of day because it was rough and maybe things weren't really going the way that we thought they should. Things came up and then we got angry and upset and we had a bad interaction with a friend. So what happens to our mind and emotions is that they're going wacko, right? So manomaya kosha, the third layer of our existence, goes wacko. And maybe even our Vijnanamaya kosha, the intelligence sheath, the mental thoughts get all worked up. And then what happens is that we are often trying to rationalize our feelings or our thoughts away. Or maybe we don't want to rationalize them away, but we wallow in our mind and it's like, oh God, what a bad day and blah, blah, blah. Or we are otherwise trying to solve our issue on the mental and emotional level. But really what might have happened is something else. Maybe it was that you went to bed till late the night before, you overslept and didn't have time to do your breath body practices or meditate or do self-massage or have a silent moment in the morning. And then everything went downhill from here. So I want you to start connecting the dots that maybe whatever the situation is in your life and whatever the situation came up for you, maybe that has nothing to do with the actual situation, but it actually has something to do with the way you showed up that day that made all the difference. Instead of blaming your environment, ask yourself, what have I done today or yesterday that brought on these emotions? And the other good question to ask is, if you have a problem in that mental and emotional sheath, is that really the best place to start out with solving it? And, if you're anything like me, I don't think so. Because maybe there's something that you can do with the other koshas, with the other sheaths, that helps you to bring more evenness to the mind and emotions. So maybe you can take a bath, or maybe you can do some self-massage and work with the physical body to create more evenness in your mind again. Or maybe you need to look at the pranamaya kosha, the breath body. Maybe you can take some deep and full belly breaths, and that immediately has this positive effect and evening out effect on the emotions. In yoga, we call the mental fluctuations and the mental fluctuations chitta vrittis. Vrittis means like a modification, and chitta means a consciousness. So it's like this flux of consciousness, the mind stuff gets disturbed. So in order for that mind stuff to become even again, simply looking at your body and your breath body, like your physical body and your breath body, that might help you to, well, I know it might, but it will help you to even out your emotions. So all of these koshas are so interrelated. They're not independent of one another, but they're interdependent, if you will. So there's an order to these layers. Now, in yoga, we call it krama. Krama means simply the order of things. The physical body most closely relates and impacts the pranamaya kosha. And the pranamaya kosha is very close to the physical body and the emotional body. So it influences it very closely. So whatever we do with our physical body, in whatever way we take care of the physical body, has an immediate effect on our breath body, and it has a very direct relationship to our emotions. No? So the Vijnanamaya kosha, the fourth layer, is our intuitive body. It is where our belief system sits. If we have a belief that let's say we have a belief that the only people who eat dinner early are old folk, and then maybe we don't want to be old folk, so we can't really do it. But then we start understanding that eating an earlier dinner is actually a good thing. We understand it in our cognitive mind that that's a good thing. And the more we understand that, the more our emotions can relax. Because see, the Vijnanamaya kosha is then very closely related to the Manomaya kosha, no? And the Vijnanamaya kosha is very closely related to the Anandamaya kosha. So whatever our thoughts are, whatever our belief system is, that will influence our emotions and our joy body, our bliss body, quite directly. So Anandamaya kosha is the bliss body, and meditation specifically relates to that kosha. So by meditating, we are actually bringing clarity and evenness to our bliss body. And that in essence has a very direct effect on our thoughts, because thoughts sits in the Vijnanamaya kosha and they are next to each other, if you will. Right? So there's this krama that's going on, that order of things, and the way these koshas relate to one another. There are so many reasons why we would want to sit for meditation. Say we just want some silence. That's a great benefit in itself, because in silence, we can start hearing the messages of the soul. As long as we have random chatter going on, we really can't hear the messages of the soul. But then there's also all these other side benefits, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But when we meditate, we sleep better at night. We feel more relaxed and at ease during the day. And we notice that our habits, they fall in line more. For many people, meditation is a keystone habit. Now remember the word keystone habit. It's keystone habit is the habit that gives a domino effect to all of the other habits. So when we have issues in any of our bodies, say the mental and emotional body, we need to ask ourselves, where do these issues come from? Where did they start, and which body might help us most to get out of it? Here's a nice worksheet that you will find in the Student Resources Hub. It gives you a little graph of how your different bodies feel right now. So take out your crayons, print this out, take out your crayons and fill that in. And that gives you a sense of like, how much am I taking care of my physical body, pranic body, emotional, intellectual, spirit body? And how would I like it to be? And that gives you a sense that, it gives you a sense of where you need to do a little bit more work on. I love these pictures by Alex Grey. Alex Grey is an awesome artist that has drawn amazing pictures of the different levels of human existence. So not only the physical body, but the energetic body as well. And for me, what this shows, what meditation does to us, is that we can step away from seeing ourselves simply as a physical being, but we start to see ourselves as a light being. All the different chakras become more chakras, like energy centers in our body. They get more illuminated. We can see more the connection between us and spirit as well. So we start to really tap into our finer essence of our being. And I sense that when we are able to touch into that place within ourselves, that more subtle place within ourselves, that it is a very powerful place to orient our lives from. It is where we step beyond the duality, where there's not really so much suffering, there's no pain, there's no emotional drama, there's no confusion. There's just kind of like this clarity and this joy. No matter what happens to our physical body, whether our physical body is sick or healthy, whether we have a good situation in our lives or a bad situation, when we tap into this deeper essence of ourselves, all of that struggle, all of that pain, it just falls away as we step into this oneness of being. So I personally my mission in my lifetime for myself is really to orient my life from that place and slowing down and just feeling that essence of who I am on a more subtle level. And research also shows that if you are able to slow down, if you're able to see more clearly and deeply, you slow down the aging process. And you will, at the age of 80 or 90, you're going to look young and vibrant. Briefly going back to keystone habit, I just want to remind you that the keystone habit is the one habit that sets all of the other habits in motion. So there's a domino effect that happens with the keystone, right? Keystone habit. And that keystone, remember when they were used to building an arch, it was the keystone, so the stone that is in the center of the arch, that was absolutely necessary for the entire arch to bear any weight. So spend some time identifying which one is your keystone habit, and then place particular attention to that one. So even if you can't do any of the other habits that day, really still do that habit. So press pause for a moment and reflect which one of the habits that we've learned so far might be your keystone habit. And then when you have an idea what that might be, ask yourself, what do you need to do in order to get that into place? Do you need to visualize it? Is your move Kaizen enough for your keystone habit, so that to make sure that you're really doing it every single day? Or is it time to step it up a notch? Can you make that keystone habit even more prominent? Can you maybe make it longer? Or can you make it more skillful and refined? So press pause for a second and reflect on that. What is meditation? Well, meditation is all about spaciousness, and it sits really in the Ananda Maya Kosha, or in the bliss body. And the bliss body is related to ether, and ether relates to spaciousness. So meditation is all about creating spaciousness in our day, spaciousness in our mind, spaciousness in our being. So I said this before, I believe, but time is not static. Time can expand and it can contract. And sitting in silence helps us experience that. In a way, it makes us understand that slowing down is in fact speeding up, and that pausing and breathing helps us to focus more. And that's the reason why we can actually get more done in a day. Often people say to me, it's like, oh yeah, I tried to meditate, but I just can't do it. Well, it's so funny to me, because how come that we think we should be able to be good at something if we have never given it a real shot? It's like this. If you want to learn to play soccer, well, you have to show up on the soccer field and kick the ball, and you have to make long shots and short shots, and you have to play with the ball on your feet and your knees and your head maybe, and you just need to become really skillful with that ball. And in the same way, meditation is the same thing. We can't. I know meditation is so simple, right? We're just sitting down and we're seemingly doing nothing. So that's probably why we think that it can be so, we should be good at it. But really, we are not just sitting in silence. We are actually training our mind to become deeply concentrated. So meditation is really, the definition of meditation is sustained concentration on one point, whatever that point is that we choose. And very distinctly, meditation is different from prayer. Because what is prayer? Prayer is really me talking to God and God's listening. And meditation is really about becoming quiet and listening to God. So it's really the other way around, right? So prayer is God's listening and meditation is we are listening. And both have their merits and both have their place. It's just that they're for different purposes, right? And so then also meditation is different from contemplation, because in contemplation we allow our stream of consciousness to wander. We're trying to find clarity on an issue or resolving a problem, and we're kind of trying to figure it out. In meditation, we're not trying to figure anything out. We're just trying to be present to the moment. We're present to what's arising, present to feelings, present to sensations, present to emotions, whatever that presence is. And there's different ways to get there. But meditation is really all about presencing and listening. I love this little chart. It shows how meditation relates to some of the other practices that we are doing. And this comes from yoga, from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So Patanjali Yoga Sutras is one of the books that's most cited in yoga. It is certainly not the only book. There is thousands of books on yoga, but the Patanjali Yoga Sutras have, they're very prominently taught in the West. What Patanjali is saying, and this book was written maybe about 2,500 years ago or so, he gives us a way to implement some of the strategies in order to get to samadhi. So samadhi is a state of oneness. It's a state of consciousness that is beyond duality. So in these 8 limbs, we have the yamas and niyamas to start out with on the left side of this chart. So the yamas and niyamas, you could say they're like the 10 commandments in Christianity. It's like our ethical standards to live by. They're like non-violence and always saying the truth and non-stealing and so on and so forth. Our third limb is asanas. Asanas simply means postures. And that is what's mostly taught in yoga in the West. That's how many people start on the journey to yoga, is through postures. Then we have pranayama, which is breathing exercises. Yeah, so simply sitting for a few minutes and breathing deeply into your belly. And yoga has this amazing obsession with pranayama. It works with the pranamaya kosha, so that second layer of our being, right? And it just allows and redirects the prana flow in a really good way, so that our emotions can be even, our physical body can be even, our thoughts can be more even, and we experience more bliss, right? So So that's our fourth limb. Then we have the fifth limb, pratyahara. Pratyahara simply means the withdrawal of the senses. One really cool thing is just simply closing your ears, closing your eyes, closing your mouth, and simply withdrawing the senses in that way. Another way is yoga nidra. It's a distinct pratyahara practice. And then we have the three limbs of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And they are kind of a continuum of one another. So dharana means simply intense focus or concentration. Dhyana means dhyana arises out of dharana in a way, because if we concentrate on one point for an extended period of time, it turns into meditation or dhyana. And if we really get absorbed by the point of at which we are focusing on, it turns into samadhi, or that state of oneness or consciousness. The difference between the first five limbs of yoga, so from yamas to pratyahara, to the last three, dharana to samadhi, is that the first five really take a lot of conscious effort to change something with our will. We direct and influence our behavior in the body, in the breath, in the way the prana flows. And in the last three limbs, so dharana there's still some effort, but at least with dhyana, it starts to be like we're dropping things away. Like we coming to a place of pure awareness, of letting go, simply observing, accepting, dropping everything. And there's no doing anymore. So ideally in meditation, you don't want to do anymore. You just want to be and just like present. After all, we're called human beings, not human doings. But often for us as human beings, we need doing first in order to arrive at the human being part. That is why Patanjali gives us those 8 limbs. Now, in essence, actually, in the first part of his book, like the first thing he says is like, well, just drop your chitta vrittis, drop your mind stuff, and arrive in samadhi. Just simply let go, and you're going to be in samadhi. But most of us can't do that. So we are employing all these different tools and practices in order to arrive at that place of oneness. The last 3 stages, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, they allow the practitioner to get in touch with the innermost being, so with our innermost self. In a way, it's really the most closely related to our soul. And while dharana, as I said before, requires effort, dhyana or meditation becomes effortless. And that's really when you know that you have arrived at a place of meditation. There is no effort anymore. It is not like you have to try and achieve something. Not at all. It is simply being present, and it should feel very effortless. And effortless. Effortless is the word. Here's another way of showing really the same thing, but with different pictures. I find that the more I step into these teachings, the more I'm realizing how visual I am about the way I explain things, and how visual I am for myself. I really need to always put a picture to something, and then my mind gets it. So maybe you notice something along those lines for yourself as well. There's so many different learning styles. There's like the visual learning style, and then there's the person who learns more by hearing things. Then there's 2 other ones. You learn by viscerally. So you make a movement with something and then you remember it. So anyway, this particular chart here is another way of expressing what I just said. Is like, if you're in a normal mind, your mind's wandering. You're thinking about family and hobbies and friends and food and money and job and what's next and what's your career like and what's your life like and this and that. So your mind is constantly wandering. Then you're starting to step into dharana, which is the concentrating mind. And when you concentrate on an object, whatever that object may be. It may be a picture, it may be your breath, it may be a candle flame, anything, can be anything. Object. So you have your mind on the object of meditation, but you're still getting somewhat distracted now. And when you move into the meditative mind, your mind kind of starts to merge with the object of your meditation. And when you start to be completely, fully absorbed by the object of your meditation, so it's almost like there's no difference between the object you're concentrating on and yourself. When that is one, so when the object and you become one, that's when you turn into samadhi. B.K.S. Iyengar says the following thing. So B.K.S. Iyengar is a very famous yoga teacher from India. He's written a bunch of books. He's a very well-respected yoga teacher. He founded Iyengar Yoga. So this is what he says about meditation. By profound meditation, the knower, the knowledge, and the known become one. So that's what I just was talking about, that when you turn into this meditative state, the object that you're concentrating on is becoming you, and you become it. So again, by profound meditation, the knower, the knowledge, and the known become one. The seer, the sight, and the seen have no separate existence from one another. It is like a great musician becoming one with his instrument and the music that comes from it. Then the yogi stands in his own nature and realizes his self, which is Atman, the part of the Supreme Soul within himself. I think this statement is so cool on so many levels. One of the things that really sticks out for me is that when he compares it to a musician, and I'm sure you have heard or felt or seen it before, that when an artist becomes one with his instrument, whether the instrument is his guitar, or this instrument is his voice, or the instrument is the body, like in a gymnast or in a dancer, when the artist, and we are all artists, when the artist becomes one with that object that they're focusing on, then we become absorbed. We become one with it. And how beautiful it is to listen to somebody like that, like a pianist who is totally one with his instrument, a guitarist who is like with his instrument, a dancer who is completely absorbed in her movements. That is really what meditation is about. And it is not about simply being stuck to a cushion and sitting, but ultimately it's going to express itself through our everyday life activities. And what do we do in order to get there? Is simply show up on our cushion to sit, to let go, to be present. All right, so why in the world should we meditate? There's so many physiological, psychological, and spiritual benefits to meditation. It's almost ridiculous. Because it works with the Anandamaya kosha, with the spirit. The spirit has this. When we are in line with our spirit, and when we are tapped into our spirit, it is almost like disease cannot take a hold of us in any way. Yes, you might still be sick, and there might still be things in your body or your mind that are not how to say that allopathic medicine might call you sick. But really, when you're tapped into your spirit, there is no such thing as sickness in a way. But indeed, the meditation has a profound effect on the way our physical body shows up for us. So here we go. It's like on a physical plane, it lowers cholesterol, it decreases respiratory rate, it increases the blood flow, and it slows the heart rate. It increases exercise tolerance, and it helps with chronic diseases such as allergies and arthritis. I mean, this is pretty cool. I mean, I want that. Then you look at the psychological benefits. It helps with focus and concentration. I think we all know that. It increases creativity because we have slowed down our mind, and our mind doesn't go like a crazy monkey, right? Increases ability to solve complex problems because we are more present. Decreases potential toward mental illness. Helps control thoughts, thereby assisting with phobias and fears. Then we look at the spiritual benefits. Crazy awesome, provides peace of mind and happiness. Isn't that what we all want? Helps to discover your purpose. Brings body, mind, and spirit into harmony. Ah, how beautiful. It creates a widening, deeper capacity for love, and it helps us to attain enlightenment, or what we call moksha in yoga. These benefits are so tremendous and so amazing. It's almost like, well, why wouldn't I do it? Here's another chart that really shows, again, the same thing that I just said in different ways. Here you see 3 lines. So the red line shows a mind that has not meditated very much. We initially experience these high highs and these high lows. Now, so there's a huge fluctuation in what the mind does. And when we start to sit in silence, and then we engage in spiritual practice, and those waves, they become not so extreme anymore. And so it evens out a little bit, but we still have highs and we still have some lows, but not even quite as extreme as before we started out. And as one practices persistently, one finally acquires the balanced state of mind and experiences calm, whatever the situation is on the outside. So really, when you look at it from the most gross level, The benefit you get from meditation is that whatever situation you find yourself in daily life is not going to influence how you feel about it or how your mind reacts to it. You're just like, oh, interesting. Oh, that's curious. So your mind starts to be like in the state of like, interesting, yeah? So that whereas before it would be like, oh my God, you don't believe what happened to me. And it's like, oh my God, life so sucks so bad. And if you get into this like meditative thing, into this, when you've trained your mind, then it's more like, oh, has happened. Oh, too bad. How am I going to deal with that? So there's much more calm and peace around your way of being. Why do we need daily mindfulness practices? This is just a different way of saying it. It counteracts stress, it counteracts degenerative disease, we experience a relaxed response to life, and so on and so forth. We engage in, here we go, we drop bad habits and we engage in good habits. And why is that? Because we just become so aware around what's serving us and what's not serving us, that it will be so much easier for us to engage habits, the good ones that we want. We get a better perspective from the mental and emotional perspective. And we participate in relationships much more skillfully because we're actually slowing down and we're not like reacting. We are able to just pause and respond to the people around us. Patanjali Yoga Sutras, remember this is one of the Bibles of yoga. What does Patanjali say about meditation? Well, he says, by the mastery of samyama, or in other words, by the mastery of concentration, meditation, and absorption, comes the light of knowledge. Oh, I love that so much, because who doesn't want knowledge? And I think in the sense, what he really means is not the knowledge in the most physical sense, but what he really knows is the deep knowing inside. It's like this intuition, that inner knowing that we all have. And by simply mastering the concentration to absorption process, we tap into this inner wisdom that's already present within us. When we are unconscious, it's darkness, right? And how do we bring light to the darkness? Well, we simply turn on a candle, or like we light a candle, or we turn on the light, yeah? So consciousness or awareness is that light. So really meditation is the light switch that brings light to darkness. That's how I see meditation. It brings light to darkness. And how much more beautiful can that be than be in an amazingly lit room of wisdom? Who and what else are we influencing? I just want to take this a step further. Who are we actually benefiting with our practice? And in order to answer that question, let's turn towards a mythology in Hinduism. It's called Indra's net. It's also called Indra's jewels or Indra's pearls. So Indra's net is the net of the Vedic god Indra. Indra is like this major god, whose net hangs over his palace in Mount Meru. So this net has a multifaceted jewel at each vertex. And each jewel is reflected in all of the other jewels. So there's a book called I hope I'm saying this right, Avatamsaka. I'm not so sure if that's right. Avatamsaka Sutra, which is a major Buddhist text of the Mahayana tradition. And it is used to describe the interconnectedness of the universe. So here's the story. I'm going to read it to you. Far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there's a wonderful net which has been hung by some cunning craftsman in such a manner that it stretches out infinitely in all directions. In accordance with the extravagant tastes of deities, the craftsman has hung a single glittering jewel in each eye of the net. And since the net itself is infinite in dimension, the jewels are infinite in number. There hang the jewels, glittering like stars in the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of these jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface, there are reflected all the other jewels in the net, infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflected in this one jewel is also reflecting all the other jewels, so that there's an infinite reflecting process occurring. So I think this is so majorly cool, because each one of us reflects one of those jewels in that net. And whatever we are doing is going to be reflected in everyone else on this planet and beyond, into the galaxies, everywhere. So whatever you do is part of that net. Any tug of the net creates a shift in the entire net. So if you find yourself in a place that seems super desperate and you're surrounded by people who don't really support your practices, or they don't support where you want to go, just keep on doing your practice and know that whatever effort you put forth will put a tug on that net. And everyone and everything around you will change over time. It might not be apparent immediately to you. It will be apparent immediately to consciousness, but maybe not to you. So trust the fact that whatever you do, you will put a tug on that net. There is a worksheet in the Master Habits ebook called Why Meditate Worksheet. I would like you to spend some time with that. Reflect on these questions. Reflect on why you want to meditate. Why is it important to you? This is maybe very different from the other people in the group. So spend some time with that and become really clear, because when you know the why, the what will come. How do you know that you're actually meditating? Well, one of the things I said before is one of the signs that you actually slipped into meditation is that it became effortless. So there's a sense of non-doing and resting in the moment. There's also a sense of timelessness that comes with meditation. During meditation, time has no meaning. So say you were planning to sit for 5 minutes, and this 5 minutes seems like an eternity, then you're not meditating. But say you were planning to sit for an hour, and then all of a sudden you hear the gong bell ring, and you're like, didn't I just sit down? Then you know you have been meditating, because there's no sense of time. There's no sense of effort in that space. How else do you know you're meditating? Well, there's a sense of space. The sense of space changes. So maybe you're sitting down in meditation and you feel like all heavy and sluggish and this and that, and then you sit and the space completely changes. There's like a sense of expansiveness that arises, and all of a sudden you feel as big as Mount Kilimanjaro. There's also a sense of disassociation in meditation. It's kind of like you're losing that sense that you have a body. And when somebody taps on your shoulder and kind of wakes you up, it's almost like you woke up from sleep and you have to return back to your body. And that's kind of when you know you have been going down that route of meditation. And then there's a feeling of lightness. Sometimes visions come. Sometimes they're beautiful visions and they feel elevating. Maybe you see hear beautiful sounds. And there's a sense of everything's fine. Everything's is perfect. I love this quote by Rumi where he says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, and there's a field. I'll meet you there. How do we actually go about starting to meditate? Well, we have to actually do it, right? We have to take action. We can't just talk about it, but we actually have to do it. So the first thing you need to do is make your environment so that you actually want to slow down and you want to sit. Imagine yourself sitting in a cluttered room like this picture on the left. It will be much more difficult to find silence within, as if you were to sit in a room like on the picture on the right that is very serene and clean and clear. We need to create an environment that actually is enticing for us to sit every day. It even just helps to set out your meditation cushion and just leave it out so it's ready, and you just need to plop down on the seat. So every time you kind of look at it, it's like, oh, have I sat today? And is it time to sit? And am I just gonna sit over there on my meditation cushion? So in a way, you want to create a space so that you look forward to choosing that area in your home that is quiet and safe and clean and free from any distractions. So you don't want any TV around, you don't want noise, you don't want dogs running around and barking and all of that kind of stuff. You want to make that space very meaningful. I always love to sit in front of my altar. I always have an altar wherever I go. It doesn't matter whether I'm traveling or I'm at home or I'm visiting for extended periods of time at my parents' house. The first thing I always do when I arrive is put up a little altar. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be like this little thing. So, you may want to put up pictures and stones and flowers, some religious symbols or candles or whatever kind of appeals to you, and make it look nice. So that when you sit down, there's this immediate exhale that happens. Then the next step would be, so now you have your space to sit. Now you want to assume a proper seat. And here's some basic sitting instructions. So what we want is a straight spine, because we are kind of on this south-north axis with our body. That is, you see it on the right picture, there's a major energy channel, the major energy channel that runs from the crown of the head to the base of our coccyx, what we call the perineum. And in a way, that is our access to connect earth to sky. So we become the conduit between what's up with God and what's up in the earth. So by keeping our spine straight and tall, we allow ourselves to be that clear conduit. So how can we make that happen? 95% of people need to sit up on a cushion to elevate their hips, which helps to rotate the hips slightly forward, which actually helps for us to keep the spine straight. So if you look at this middle picture, this lady, she has a rounded back. Her path, her Sushumna Nadi, is not straight. It will be more difficult for her to connect to heaven and to earth, to be that clear conduit. So when you put a slight cushion underneath your buttocks, you get naturally that rotation of the hips forward. So what you want to do when you sit on your cushion is not to sit all the way up on your cushion, but more at the edge of your cushion, which allows that rotation to happen. The other thing to look for is your knees. So identify the crest of your hip, so the highest point on your hip, and when you're sitting, and the knees, the top of the knees should be below that crest of the hip. So in that picture with the lady here, it's borderline. If her knees are almost as high as the crest of the hip, or maybe they are, it's a little bit hard to see in this picture, but for her it would definitely be beneficial to sit up on a bolster. And even for somebody super flexible like myself, I could sit without a bolster, but still it makes it easier for me to rotate the hips and keep my spine straight. Now the other piece that's not shown here is how to keep your head. And you want to keep your head in line with your spine. You don't want to tilt your head up or down. You want to look straight ahead. Because what I learned from an astrological perspective, if you turn your head down, you think more of the past. If you turn your head up, you'll tend to think of the future. And if you keep your head straight ahead, it will be more easy for you to stay in the present moment. So here are some different postures, the way you can put your legs. So traditionally, the meditators were sitting on the floor, either in full lotus, half lotus, or Burmese style. And however you want to sit, it doesn't matter. You don't have to push yourself into the full lotus, which is apparently the most effective sitting posture. But really, it's only effective if you're flexible enough to actually make that happen. Otherwise, why? And then the other ways to sit is like on a stool, or that seizure style, where I call it the hero's pose style, or simply on a chair. So there's really no hard and fast rule about how you can sit. It is more that most important is that you keep your spine straight, and your feet, when you sit on a chair, you want to make sure that your feet are grounded. So the entire sole of the foot is grounded on the floor. And it just kills me when I look up meditation chair. I looked at an image meditation chair or whatnot. And there's all these products that are being sold for meditating properly. And it's just such an oxymoron, right? We're trying to do this simple thing of sitting. And what happens is that this entire industry develops around meditation cushions and, platforms for meditation, and stools and chairs specifically made for meditation. It's like you go on and so forth. It's just funny, So anyway. Let's talk about kinds of meditation. So there's two distinct approaches to meditation. There's one that is more concentration. So that falls more in the dharana category that we talked about before, where you are concentrating. So on, for example, the breath. That would be the most beginner's place to start. You simply follow the flow of the in-breath and the flow of the out-breath. The flow of the in-breath and the flow of the out-breath. That is a very clever way of actually doing meditation, because the breath is always with us. We don't have to have a specific gadget. The breath is always there. And even if we're standing in the grocery line, we can just I'm noticing my breath. I'm waiting, I'm noticing my breath. Oh, I'm in my car in a traffic jam, I'm noticing my breath. So this is like this place of concentration, right? We can also concentrate on a mantra, which a mantra is simply a phrase that we concentrate on. And typically that phrase has been in Sanskrit, but it doesn't really matter. You can also use it in English. It's just that the Sanskrit mantras, they carry a specific vibration that English phrases don't do, because Sanskrit is a phonetic language. Whatever word you're saying in Sanskrit carries that vibration with it. Anyway, so that is just a point of focus again. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. If that's your mantra, say, you can just Om Namah Shivaya. That's all you're thinking about. And typically you have a mala, like a little prayer beads, and you're just counting. You could also just simply focus on your sensations arising and passing away. Or you could focus on numbers, like I'm breathing in 1, I'm breathing out 2, I'm breathing in 3, breathing out 4. And go on up to 10, and then go back down to 1, and go back up to 10. And whenever you lose it, you start back at 1 again. So those are the most simplest ways of approaching meditation, where you're focusing more on concentrating first, and that would ultimately lead you to meditation. Or if you're more experienced, what you can do is go directly to direct perception and connect to the awareness as such beyond the physical. Tap into simply your way of being. And if you have done concentration meditation long enough, and you have gotten to this place of meditation, you will know what that feels like. You will start to understand how to connect to it more quickly and effortlessly. And then when you simply plop down on your meditation cushion, it might just arise for you. So that's direct perception. And here Dr. Vasant Lad has something to say on that direct perception meditation. So Dr. Vasant Lad is a very prominent Ayurvedic practitioner and doctor from India, but he has a school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he has been there for a very long time. He's an amazing, amazing man, very, in my opinion, very realized and very, such a sweetheart. And you can tell that he has really, internalized the practices that he's teaching about. So this is what he's saying about meditation. Meditation is an action of awareness, which becomes perception and then sensation. Through sensory perception, we perceive the respective object of perception. Without interfering with our perception, which means our thoughts, feelings, or emotions, just let the perception come in and create sensation. Then let the sensation flower into perception, and the perception will yield into pure awareness. This is a direct method of meditation, which is awareness in action. Without choice, simply surrender to your environment and remain in the present moment. In that moment, there's bliss, peace, and health. So, I really, going back to this idea of, I can't believe we are not meditating more. If that is really the place where we can end up in bliss, peace, and health, why in the world wouldn't we do it? Sure, what are some of the obstacles to practice? And for some of you, this practice will come easily, and for others, the commitment will take a little bit more of an effort. It kind of depends on your inclination and on your nature and quality of being. But what I know for myself is that meditation comes in big waves. I had a year a while back where I was sitting every morning for 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how long that practice was taking. It was a particular sadhana I was doing. I was sitting every morning for 1 year straight. And then the following year, it shifted to the evening, and I sat for 45 minutes to an hour every evening. And it was these particular sadhanas that I was doing for an entire year. And if I missed one day, I had to make it up the next day. And I didn't really want to do that. So I made sure that I actually really sat every day. And right now, I'm just sitting for 5 minutes every day. So because my life calls for something else right now. But I also know that meditation is important, and I still show up because I still want to keep that habit going, at least the habit of continuously showing up. And I do mantra practice throughout the day anyway. So as I'm walking through my busy life, my working life, I do remember breathing all the time. I do remember my mantras all the time. And then I just spend 5 minutes every day to sit, because I feel like that's what's called for. And what I also notice about this pulsation is that when I'm going into this pulsation of, I'm going to sit every day for half an hour or an hour, and I actually do it, I feel really satisfied with myself. And then when that pulsation contracts and I sit only 5 minutes and I have a really hard time actually doing it, then I'm like, oh God, I'm so bad. But I'm supposed to be a yogi and I'm supposed to be sitting longer. And there's all this judgment that arises. But really what it is really that recognition that things come in pulsation, and that I need to be very, very kind and compassionate with myself, that sometimes it's really called for and other times it isn't. And you will know, there's a fine line between avoiding something and resistance to something, and so just simply being too lazy to do something, versus the pulsation is expansive, pulsation is contractive kind of a feeling. You don't want to be in this like lazy zone and that avoidance zone. That's really not helpful. But as long as you're in this pulsation of like, now it's time for a longer practice, now it's time for a shorter practice, and it's within that pulsation like that is acceptable, that it's called for. You just don't want to slip outside of that pulsation. I hope that makes sense. So what are the 5 obstacles to meditation? This is coming from Buddhism, and they're called the 5 hindrances. So the first hindrance is, sensual desire. There's a particular type of wanting that seeks for happiness through the 5 senses. So whatever we see, whatever we smell, whatever we hear, whatever we taste, physical feelings. So it's about, the sensual desires are all about gratification on the outer level. And they can pull us away from meditation, right? So, but I want to watch television, or I want to have a really nice dinner with my sweetheart, or I want to listen to that CD that I just downloaded. Those are all sensual desires. And they keep us from actually showing up on our meditation cushion. It's important for us to recognize them. Then there's aversion or ill will. And what's that? That's simply thoughts that are related to resentment. Maybe you have a rejection, or you're not forgiving someone, or there's some hostility or hatred towards something or someone. And when that arises, all these negative emotions are often so intense and so overbearing that it's hard for us to sit. And again, it's just simply recognizing that and being okay with the different feelings that arise. Then we have sluggishness or sloth. So what does that mean? That's heaviness in the body. There's dullness of mind. And it's just like we sit down and we're like, oh God, I feel so shitty. Oh God, everything feels so stagnant. I don't know if I can sit here. And there's this inertia and that thick depression of energy present. Then we have restlessness or worry. It's simply an inability to calm the mind because our mind's turning with the different thoughts. And then there's doubt, lack of conviction or trust that actually what we are doing is actually bearing any fruit. So, and then I want to add that there's another hindrance, or maybe it's more of a bailout, maybe it's more of an excuse, but that is time. So often I hear people say, yeah, but I don't have time to meditate. But really, the busier our life gets, the more important it is for us to actually make time for meditation. It reminds me of what the Dalai Lama was saying. He said that, tomorrow I have a busy day. I will need to meditate more. And it doesn't make any sense. It's an oxymoron. Why would he meditate more if he's already busy? But he's saying that because when he meditates more, he's more focused, more present, more calm, and he will be able to meet those stresses with much more ease and grace. And then I venture to say that a time management problem. So if you're saying, I don't have time to meditate, it's really a mission problem. You simply haven't made it a priority for yourself to sit. And you can't tell me that you don't have time to sit for 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes every day. It's just impossible. I mean, every one of us can take 2 minutes out of our day to meditate. That's it. Can you take 1 or 2 minutes off of your TV time? 1 or 2 minutes off of your phone time, of your Facebook time? Or whatever it is that you're kind of wasting your time on? So I want you to think about that and really tap into what's important to you. Is it really that important to watch that show at night? What is it going to give you? Is it really giving you that much joy, that much connection? And really, can you miss maybe 1 minute? Maybe even in the commercial break. Can you meditate in a commercial break? Get creative and drop that thing about that sensual desires will give you lasting fulfillment. It's not happening. The more you try, the less it's happening. The question that comes up for me then is, how can we actually work with these obstacles? How can we find an antidote to them? So allopathic medicine, as well as Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, and really most medical systems, when some quality or some symptom is present, we bring in the opposite quality in order to balance it out. So in the same way, if there is an emotion present, we have a counter emotion. Or if we have these obstacles present, we bring in basically the opportunity, right? So in terms of the sensory desires, what can you do? Well, you can counteract your senses wondering what's for dinner and wanting something like watching that television show or whatever that sensory desire is. Actually focusing on single-pointed attention. Saying, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I am just focusing on this candle, or I'm just focusing on this picture, I'm just focusing on my breath. And keeping the sense, and that keeps the sensory desires under check. So that the mind as well as the senses are like a monkey, right? They're running around like crazy. And our job is to train that monkey and to train those senses to stick close to us. How can you counteract aversion and ill will? If you're thinking hatred thoughts, if you're thinking uncompassionate thoughts, you're bringing in metta, which is loving kindness. You're just like, no, I love, I forgive, I love, I forgive. I actually have a great story around that. When I was getting divorced, I had this one day where I could have demolished my entire apartment. And I was standing in my kitchen and I was present enough to myself saying, oh my God, if I don't do something right now, I am going to destroy this entire apartment. So I wasn't willing to do that because I already had practiced yoga for some years at that time and didn't want that to happen. And I didn't want my mind to be the ruler of my actions. So I went into my yoga room and sat down, and what I did was exactly bringing in the opposite emotion, the antidote to ill will. So I felt a lot of, I don't know if you want to call it hatred. It was probably anger. It was a lot of anger, a lot of feeling abandoned and let go of. But there was kind of this sense of hate in the air. And I sat down and I said to myself, I choose love. I choose love. I choose love. And I let the anger and the hatred be there. And I fully embraced it, but I invited love in. I choose love. Now I choose love. And it only took like 15 or 20 minutes of this repeated bringing in of the antidote that actually counteracted that feeling of hatred and ill will. And in that sense, I went back to a place of peace and calm. So in this way, you can bring in the opposite action, right? So what about sloth and torpor? You simply use arousal. So if you feel like your body is completely stagnant, instead of sitting there and trying to make yourself sit, maybe get up and do some exercise movements, dance around a little bit, move your joints, and then try again. And that gets your prana moving and makes you more present. What if you're restless? What if your mind is constantly turning? Well, what you can do is to simply focus on contentment and gratitude. Really being content with what you have. Being grateful what has shown up for you in this life or today or whatever it is that you can think of. And that brings you back into the presence of the heart. What about doubt? If you're doubting the effectiveness of the practice, or you're doubting the outcome, or you're doubting if, oh my God, is this doing anything? Well, there's a few things you can do. If you're really doubting whether the practice is doing anything for you, maybe picking up a book on meditation and reading up on it, or revisiting this video and going over the benefits of this practice will help you alleviate the doubt. Also, putting yourself into a state of curiosity and wondering, what else is there that I can learn? What else is there that I can explore about myself and about this whole practice that everyone talks so highly about? Your awareness is your best asset and ultimate currency. Develop the power of your awareness. And I mean, this is so incredibly, insanely true. This statement comes from one of my mentors, Kate Stillman. Really, your awareness is your best asset. The more aware you are, the better you can align your habits, the better you can align your choices, the more skillful you're going to be in choosing your career, the more skillful you can be in choosing the people you're around with. And on and on and on. Awareness is really like the first step to change is awareness. Yeah, this is like a common saying. But when you really stop and really let that statement sink in, your awareness is your first step to change, you realize that truly every single action, every single thing you do in your life starts with awareness. It becomes very important when you want to incorporate meditation into your life to choose you guessed it, a trigger. Because if you don't have a trigger, you won't remember doing it. So you have to remember that good habits and bad habits both have the cycle of having a trigger, a routine, and a reward. So say if there's a cycle of you feel tired and the routine is you watch television and the reward is you feel relaxed and chilled, that is a trigger, routine, reward cycle. So knowing this, then we can say, okay, does this watching television truly give me the reward that I want? Now, you might not want to give up watching television. That's another story. The willingness to give it up comes first. But the realization can go like this, that watching television, yes, is giving you relaxation. And yes, you're chilled afterwards. But that in the long run, it actually depletes your nervous system. Just like drinking wine will, or beer, or going on Facebook, or having a computer addiction, or whatever that addiction may be for you. Bad habits, the difference between a good habit and a bad habit is really that a bad habit has unwanted side effects. It's like a pharmaceutical. The pharmaceutical does the job, but the side effects are so intense that you might not want to take it in the long run. Versus an herb that has the same action as the pharmaceutical, but in the long run, it will be more sustainable and more rewarding, and it doesn't have the unwanted side effect. So if we know this, then if that you feel tired is the trigger, well, maybe you can exchange that routine with, I feel tired. Oh, I'm going to just meditate for 5 minutes or an hour or whatever that time length is that you need. Here's what James Clear is saying about triggers. You might have to experiment before you find the right cue, which is the trigger, that reminds you to start a new habit. You might have to think a bit before figuring out how to make your new habit so easy that you can't say no. And rewarding yourself with positive self-talk can take some getting used to if you're not someone who typically does that. So there's a few things he's saying here, right? So first we have to experiment with our trigger. Sometimes it's not that obvious and we just really have to investigate a little bit why we would want, what the trigger might be. So in this book, The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg, he tells a story where he was trying to find his trigger for eating a cookie every afternoon. And so he had started to investigate, like, why am I eating this cookie? I don't want to eat this cookie, but I'm gaining weight and I don't want that. So what is it? So first he was observing that he was eating this cookie every afternoon at 3 o'clock. So he thought it was the trigger of 3 o'clock. But then what he found out is that what was he doing? He was actually getting up, going to the cafeteria, buying himself a cookie, and then engaging in conversation with other people. And so what he came down to was that actually the trigger, yes, it was 3 o'clock was a trigger, but the trigger underneath that is that at 3 o'clock he was actually yearning for human connection. And that's why he went to buy himself a cookie and then have a conversation with some coworkers. Instead, then what he chose, like, what else can I do? Maybe can I go to the cafeteria and buy some water? Would that do the same trick? Or maybe I can just simply go out for a walk or visit my cubicle next door and have a conversation with my coworkers there instead of buying the cookie. And that is the kind of investigation you need to do for yourself in order to find the triggers. And then he's saying rewarding yourself with positive self-talk can help. And that is so true. We have to give ourselves a pat on the back. When we set for meditation, say for 2 minutes, and our rational mind wants to think like, oh God, this is pathetic. I'm just sitting for like 2 minutes. Or you're sitting maybe even for 30 minutes and your goal was 1 hour. And you're like, oh God, that's pathetic. I'm never going to get there, blah, 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 sort of a talk. That is not helpful. That is absolutely downtrodden. What is more uplifting is to say, hey, you did a good job today, Alexandra. You sat for 2 minutes. You said you were going to sit for 2 minutes and you did it. Well done. And that in itself is just like this uplifting, amazing, amazing step. Just like anything in life, if we want to learn something, we need repetition. Now we need practice. We call it abhyasa in yoga. And really that applies to any habit, but particularly with meditation. It is this thing about meditation where it's so simple. It's kind of hard for the mind to wrap itself around that concept. It's like, if it's so simple, like, is it really anything that I'm doing? And since most of us are so new to it, we totally need to start from scratch, and we need to practice a little bit more, like be more consistent until you step into this pulsation of practice. So just like a kid learns to read and write, be aware that it may feel awkward at first, and then it may get easier and easier with time. So just like a 6-year-old may be able to read a word, or they may be able to even, maybe a second grader may even read sentences already. By the time you are in high school, you're fluent in reading. And just like in the same way, when we start to practice meditation, at first it might feel a little bit odd and awkward, and your posture isn't quite right, and it feels not good, and then you feel like you need to move all the time. And as you practice more and more, you start building that momentum, and naturally the time that you meditate will increase. So one of the things that is really important about practice in general is that we make it, one of the things about practice is that we want to make it continual. We want to make it every day, even if it's just for a short period of time. And that builds momentum. If you practice once a week for, say, 60 minutes or 90 minutes, and then you don't practice the rest of the week, that is not as good as a daily 2-minute practice. If you think it, I always liken it to a rubber band. If you stretch a rubber band once for an extended period of time, and then you let go of it, it pretty much goes back to its original, its original length. But then if you take a rubber band and you lengthen it for some time, let go. Next day, lengthen it for some time, let go. Lengthen it for some time, let go. Lengthen it for some time, let go. And you do that every day, and over time, that rubber band will wear out. And it's the same way with our practice, that over time, we make a groove. We make this like, okay, we extend ourselves. The other thing to practice is that potency actually matters more than quantity. So say you're sitting for 5 minutes every day, but you make it like this really potent sit, where you sit down, you're completely focused, you're completely just being, you're like in it, and you want to do it. That is better than sitting for, say, half an hour, being constantly distracted all the time and thinking, oh God, I'm sitting, and it's like la, 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 la. And you're thinking about something else. So don't just sit, but sit with love, and sit with attention, and sit with awareness. And then the other thing I do want to say about practice is, and this is really like a key to get here, practice is always an invitation. It is never an obligation. If you come to your practice with obligation, just forget about it. Make it an invitation and act as such. And it will create so much joy and so much peace for yourself. You'll be wallowing in love all day long. And on that subject, I want to dive a little bit deeper into what that means about bringing love and gratitude to your practice. Now, this is kind of big. Why is it important to bring love to the practice, and why is it important to bring focus to your practice? Well, first of all, I want to say is that spiritual practices and yoga practices is truly a privilege. Who in this world can actually say that they have the luxury of being able to sit down and meditate on a daily basis? So many people live in poverty and spend all their waking hours worrying about where the next morsel of food is coming from. Or people are living in war-torn war-torn places like in Syria or in the Middle East or something. I mean, it's incredible to me how blessed we are with feeling safe and held in our society and in the place that we live at. And then the other thing that you have to realize is that for us as mainstream people to have the privilege to practice is just so amazing. These practices only have come to the mainstream maybe in the past, I want to stretch it even like 100 years, maybe not even, maybe like 50 or 60 years, maybe like since the 60s, 50s or 60s. These practices have always been held very secret, especially the tantric practices. And they were so sacred that only monks and nuns were practicing them and not householders. You know, take the example of Tibet before it was invaded by China. What happened is that every family was actually sending at least one child to the monastery because it was an honor for them to have one person in their family that was devoting all their time and all their love to spiritual practices. So in this way, it is almost a responsibility for us to take on. It is such a blessing that we can afford to do this, and we have access to the knowledge on top of this. So it makes sense to approach our practice with that sort of attitude, with an attitude of gratitude and love. And so why is this important? So there's something in the brain called the nucleus basilis. And the nucleus basilis is a group of neurons of the basal forebrain. So neurons are nerve cells. It's a specialized cell transmitting nerve impulses. And we need the nucleus basilis to create pathways for understanding, which these pathways, we need those new pathways in order to have new perceptions. So the nucleus basilis is pretty much open until the age of about 10 or 11, and is open 24/7. So that means that new neural pathways can be formed by children very, very easily. And that is why children can learn new things so fast. But at the age of around 10 or 11 or so, that nucleus basilis starts to be switched off. And it only opens again in certain circumstances. So as adults, the nucleus basilis is closed unless we open it through specific actions. And what are these actions? Well, the nucleus basilis switches on when we have a novel situation, like something we have never experienced before. So say we go on a trip to Patagonia and we have never seen majestic mountains like the Patagonian mountains, and that awe and that novel situation opens us up to new pathways in our thinking. Other ways it can be turned on is shock or trauma, or maybe you had you almost died and you came back to life. That turns on the nucleus basilis. And then the third way it can be turned on is through, intense focus. So if you maintain your focus for an extended period of time, for example, when you're listening intensively to a lecture, or when you meditate, or when you focus on some task intently, the nucleus basilis opens up. It helps us to form new pathways in our brain and makes us understand new things in a different way that we have never thought possible. So focus in that sense is very important if we want to open up to deeper consciousness. So that's the one thing we need for practice. And then the second thing we need for a successful practice and for positive change really is love and gratitude. Because what happens when we are in a state of love and gratitude, oxytocin is released from our endocrine system. And oxytocin is the love and cuddle hormone. It's like a softening serum. Oxytocin is an elixir that when it is dropped on cement, it softens it. So if you will say our status quo is like cement, but if we step into this place of love, then that place can soften. And that applies for both men and women. It's not a womanly thing. Men can have that same experience. So when that oxytocin is released from our endocrine system, it makes us more receptive to change. And it makes it more easy for us to connect with people in a meaningful way. So this oxytocin makes us more receptive to change. It makes our mind more malleable. And how can you make this oxytocin be released? Well, if we connect with people in a meaningful way, oxytocin is released. So it doesn't only require for us to have a sexual act, but simply having a good conversation with a girlfriend or a friend in general, or being with children who are naturally in more of a state of love, having a cuddling session with our partner. All of those things release oxytocin and make us more receptive to positive change. So in summary, we can say we need oxytocin as a softening serum so we can penetrate all patterns. So simply love and gratitude is what we need. And then the second ingredient is focus. So the focus activates the nucleus basalis, and that allows us to create new neural pathways, which then lead to positive change again. So the recipe for change really is love plus focus equals recipe for positive change and shift in consciousness. So again, I want to remind you that practice is an invitation, not an obligation, because what does obligation do? It crushes love and gratitude. And if we see our practice as an invitation, love and gratitude can automatically flourish. So I want you to pause this recording here for a few minutes and ask yourself a few questions. The one question I want you to ask yourself is, what do you want in your life? And how is meditation going to help you get there? What do you want in life? And how is meditation going to help you get there? The other question you may want to ask yourself is, why do others around me want me to meditate today? Why do others around me need me to meditate today? And then the third or the last question is a good question to ask yourself. Why does the planet, the cosmos, and evolution need me to meditate today? So pause the recording for a few minutes and journal on those questions. So there's a Start Meditating worksheet in your Master Habits ebook. Check that out, fill that in as well. And then check out all the growth work in the Student Resources Hub. And so enjoy talking to you about meditation. And I hope we can tap into the fields together by simply sitting together and widening or changing Indra's net and making ourselves be reflected in all other beings and affecting evolution, affecting consciousness with our simple Kaizen move of choosing to sit and be calm. Sending you so much love. I'm so glad to be here with you. This is Alexandra signing off. Bye for now.